The first word I ever spoke, in the year and a half after my mother and baby sister were laid in the same pine box, was not Pa. It was the name of a woman my father had never asked to come, and never meant to keep, and could not bring himself to send away. I was 5 years old that winter. My name is Tobias Wren, and I am old now, and I have stood at my own forge for 43 years in the same snow shadow valley I was born in. The hamlet is still called Hawthorne Bend, though the stage line is long shut. Back then it was 9 houses, a smithy, a sawmill that ran 4 months of the year and the stop where the Concord coach came through twice a month in fair weather and not at all when the pass closed. The pass closed early that year. The first big snow took the high road on the 18th of November, and we settled in for what was coming. My father set extra coal at the back of the smithy. My sister Mercy, 12 and running our house since the fever, salted the last of the pork. The twins, Aldrich and Bram, 9 and inseparable, stacked another cord against the east wall. I sat on the smithy step and did not speak, because I had not spoken since the morning I had crawled into my mother's bed and found her cold and the baby cold beside her, and the words had simply gone out of me like a lamp blown. My father did not push me on it. He was a tall man, Cassius Wren, with black hair gone iron-gray too soon, and a quiet that had grown louder after the fever. He shoed every horse for 20 miles and mended every wagon iron in the county, and he loved his children in the only way left to him after grief had taken the easy half of his heart. He fed us. He kept us warm. He sat at supper and bent his head over his plate and looked at each of us once and went back to his forge. Mercy raised us in the daylight hours. My father raised us by keeping the world from falling in. The stage that brought her came on the 2nd of December, 3 weeks late, and it should not have come at all. I remember the bells on the lead horse, because the wind dropped at the wrong moment and we all heard them at once, faint and wrong-sounding, like something arriving where nothing was expected. Mercy froze with the broom in her hand. The twins ran for the window. My father came up out of the smithy with his leather apron still on, steam rising off his arms in the cold doorway. We went out into the yard. The coach came down the last of the grade on its brakes, slewing in the ruts. The lone driver was slumped sideways with the reins wrapped twice around his fist. When the coach stopped, he did not climb down. He fell down, and my father caught him before he hit the post. I understood, even at 5, that he was a dead man who did not know it yet. His name was Henry Slate, and he had pneumonia, and he had brought one passenger over a closed pass through 3 nights of snow because she had paid the coach line in good faith, and he had been raised to honor what a man took money for. The passenger stepped down by herself. She was tall in a gray wool coat buttoned to her throat, a carpet bag in one hand and a wooden case in the other, her hair the color of dark honey and pinned plain under a hood. Her face was not what the country called pretty. It was something better than pretty. It was the kind of face that took in a yard full of strangers and a dying driver and 4 motherless children and a smithy steaming in the cold, and did not flinch and did not put on a show. She set both bags down. "Sir, this man needs a bed at once, and a kettle, and someone to send for a doctor if there is one. My name is Eleanor Vance. I beg your pardon for arriving on you." My father said the doctor was 40 miles south, and the pass was shut, and there would be no doctor till April. He said it quiet, level, without unkindness and without softness either. Then he picked up Henry Slate as if he weighed nothing and carried him into the inn, and Eleanor followed with her 2 bags. She glanced back once at us 4 children, and her look paused on me, the smallest and the quiet one, and I saw her decide something behind her eyes that she did not say aloud. Henry Slate died on the 4th of December, just before dawn, with Eleanor holding a cool cloth to his forehead and my father sitting up across the room. She wrote his name and the date in a small book she carried, folded his hands on his chest, and walked out into the snow a while at the edge of the yard. Then she came back inside and asked Mr. Halloway what she owed for the room. He told her there was no stage out until April, no telegraph either. There was, in short, no leaving. She put both hands flat on the bar to steady herself a moment, then straightened and said she would need work to pay her keep till the thaw, and she was a fair plain seamstress and a passing fair cook, and was not afraid of any honest labor a town could give her. My father was in the doorway by then. He had come over about the burying. He listened. He looked at his own boots. Then he looked up at Eleanor Vance the way a man looks at a piece of iron he has not decided yet what to make of. "Ma'am, I have 4 children and no woman in the house since my wife. If you can stand the noise and the cold, you can have the room above my kitchen and your board and a fair coin in the spring in exchange for the cooking and what mending you find. The work is not light, the pay is not much, but you will not be beholden." She looked at him a long moment. "Mr. Wren, I accept." She came home with us that afternoon. Mercy gave up her bed in the loft and slept beside me on the trundle and pretended she did not mind. The twins watched Elena unpack her wooden case, thread on bobbins, a folding pair of shears, a thimble worn smooth, 4 cards of buttons without breathing. She cooked supper that first night out of what was in the cellar, without comment on what was not. Salt pork hominy, the last of the late onions, a pan of cornbread that came out of the oven so light my father looked at it twice before he ate it. She waited to see whether we said grace. My father said grace in 4 words the way he had since the fever. "Lord, for this, amen," and she echoed amen and ate. Nobody talked. The twins ate looking sideways at her. Mercy ate watching me. I ate without looking at anybody, because if I looked at her too long the thing behind my ribs that had been a stone for 18 months might do something I was not ready for. After supper she opened her sewing kit and laid out, without any fuss, the 4 pairs of trousers my father had stacked in a corner 3 months back, meaning to mend himself. She mended 1 pair that night, the other 3 over the next 2 evenings. The twins, who had been wearing patched-over patches all winter, came down on the 4th morning and found their good trousers folded on the bench. They looked at each other and at her and said both at once, "Thank you, Miss Vance." "You are welcome, please call me Elena," and she went back to her coffee. She did not try to be our mother. That is the thing I want to say plain, because the way other people told it later made it sound as if she walked in and won us by sweetness, and that was not what happened. Elena behaved as if the house were a thing she had been hired to look after, and she looked after it, and she did not touch the corners that were not hers. She did not move my mother's wedding picture down off the mantel. She did not sit in my mother's chair. She did not call any of us by a pet name. She asked Mercy how Mercy had been doing the bread, and then she did the bread Mercy's way. She asked the twins what their mother had sung to them at night, and then she did not sing it because some songs, she said, belonged only to one voice. She sang other songs low while she worked. She let me alone. She did not try to make me speak. She set my plate in front of me at supper without looking at me hard. At night, when I sat on the smithy step watching my father work because the hammer on iron was a sound my mother had loved, Elena sometimes came out and sat beside me, bringing her sewing to work by the forge light. She set her shoulder a careful inch from mine and breath slow, and after a while I learned I could lean against her arm, and she would not move and would not make a sound about it and would not tell anyone in the morning. I leaned against her arm most nights. My father, swinging his hammer, saw and did not say so. It was Mercy who broke first. It was the 12th of December, 8 days in, and Mercy was at the kitchen table trying to let down the hem on her own Sunday dress because she had grown 2 inches since the summer, and she was making a mess of it, and she was crying in the quiet, furious way Mercy cried, which was no sound at all and a face wet as if she had been out in the rain. Elena sat down across from her. She did not say there. She said, "Show me your stitch." Mercy showed her. Elena looked at it without any face. "That is a good even running stitch. The trouble is the fabric. Cotton this thin will not hold a deep hem. We will piece a band of dark calico to the bottom and it will last you the year. I have calico in my case." "I do not have money for calico, Miss Elena." "I am not selling it to you. I am giving it to you. Sit there." They worked together until the lamps wanted trimming. When Mercy stood up at the end of the evening and held the dress against herself in the lamp glow, she put both arms around Elena's neck without warning and held on the way a child holds on. Elena stood very still and let her, and looked over the top of Mercy's head at the wall and did not move her hands. She did not put her arms around Mercy, not yet, but the next morning Mercy folded our mother's apron, the one she had been wearing every day since the fever, and laid it across Elena's place at the table without a word. Elena looked at the apron a long while, then picked it up and tied it on. "Thank you, Mercy. I will be careful with it." The twins came around the afternoon. A mule from the sawmill got into our yard and put its head through the kitchen window glass, trying to reach the bread cooling on the sill. And Elena caught the mule by the headstall as calm as if she had been raising mules her whole life, and walked it back to the mill on a piece of clothesline. The twins followed her there and back with their mouths open, and from that day forward she could ask them any errand and they would have run it before she finished asking. They began to save things for her: an arrowhead, a hawk feather, a smooth river stone. She put each one on the shelf above the dish rail and dusted them every Saturday. The arrowhead is still on that shelf. I am looking at it now. My father came slowest. He came so slow it was almost not coming at all, and then one day it had already happened. I remember the morning he carried the coal scuttle up from the cellar and stopped at the kitchen doorway and looked at Alina at the bread board. Her hair was coming down a little on one side and a piece had stuck to her cheek with the flour, and my father, who had not reached toward a woman in 18 months, lifted his hand and tucked that piece of hair behind her ear with one careful finger, the way he checked the seat of a horseshoe. Then he picked up the scuttle and went out to the smithy without a word. Alina did not turn around for a long count of breaths. I saw it from the floor where I sat with a piece of harness leather Aldrich had given me. I did not have a word for it then, but I knew, in the way a child knows, that my father had crossed a river he had been standing on the bank of since November, and there was no going back over. The pass opened on the 22nd of March. A rider came on the 27th to tell us a coach would be through on the 2nd of April for the southbound run, and any passenger stranded at Hawthorne Bend through the winter might claim the through fare she had paid in November. Alina began to pack on the 31st. She did it quietly. She folded her 2 gray dresses into the carpet bag and put the sewing kit back into the wooden case. She laundered our mother's apron and pressed it and folded it on the kitchen bench with a note on top, "For Mercy, with my thanks." She baked 4 loaves of bread the morning of the 2nd and set them on the sill to cool, so the house would smell of bread when she was no longer in it. Then she put on her gray wool coat, picked up the carpet bag and the wooden case, and came out into the yard. My father was at the post holding his hat. The twins were standing one on each side of him, both crying without making any sound, the way Mercy cried. Mercy was holding the door open with her shoulder. I was on the step. The Concord coach came down the grade on its brake. The new driver climbed down to load the bag. Alina set the wooden case on the step. She bent down to me. She did not say goodbye. She knew better than to say goodbye to a child who had not spoken in 18 months. She put her hand on the top of my head, the way she put her hand on the top of my head every night before she went up to the loft, and she said very low, "Tobias, you will be all right. I am glad I knew you." She straightened. She picked up the case and turned to walk to the coach. I opened my mouth. The word that came out was not large. It was not clean. It was rough because my throat had not done that work in a year and a half. But it was clear, and it was a name, and it was hers. Alina. She stopped. She did not turn around right away. I saw her shoulders go up and stay up. The driver, halfway to the coach with her bag, stopped too. My father at the post took 1 step forward. Then she turned, and her face was wet, and she came back across the yard to me and went down on both knees in the snow and put her arms around me the way she had not put her arms around Mercy. And she held on, and I held on. And the second word I said in 18 months was the only other word I had been saving. I said, "Stay." My father came across the yard then. He stopped a pace from us. He took his hat all the way off, which was not a thing my father did out of doors in March, and he turned it once in his hands. "Miss Vance, Alina, I have been a poor hand at saying what I mean since my wife. I am asking now in front of my children and the driver and God if you would stay, not as a hired hand, as my wife if you will have me, as their mother if you will have them. The work will still not be light, but you would not be alone in it, and neither would we." Alina, kneeling in the snow with both arms around me, looked up at my father. She did not answer fast. She had never answered fast in her life. She looked at Mercy in the doorway and at the twins beside my father, and last of all down at me, and what she saw in our 4 faces was, I think, what she had been waiting all winter to be sure of. Then she looked back at my father. "Mr. Wren, Cassius, I will." The driver took her fare back out of his pocket and laid it on the step and went on without her. The coach went down the south road and around the bend by the sawmill and was gone. We stood in the yard a long time after. They were married on the 11th of April by the circuit preacher who came through on the next coach, in our kitchen, because the church had burned the spring before. Mercy stood up with Alina. The twins stood up with my father. I sat on the bench between them and held the new wooden horse my father had hammered out of a horseshoe blank the week before, and I watched my mother, for that is what she was from the day she came back across the yard, and what she remained for the 31 years she lived after, say the words that made it so. I am an old man now. My own children are grown. The forge is still warm. The arrowhead is still on the shelf. People ask me sometimes when I tell this how a child knows. How a child not yet 6, who has not spoken since his mother died, knows to speak the right name at the right minute. I do not have a good answer. I think a child is the part of a family still listening for the thing the grown people have stopped daring to hope for. I think the silent ones listen hardest of all. My father did not save her and she did not save him. What they did was harder and quieter than saving. They made a place for one another to stand. And 4 motherless children, snowed into a stage-stop hamlet in a year the pass closed early, made a place at our table for a stranded woman with a carpet bag and a wooden case, and she sat down in it and she stayed. I said her name first. I have said it every day of my life since.